What can you expect as a graduate from the Impact programme? To build the tools and frameworks needed to refine your leadership style, refine your skills to face boardroom challenges, gain the aptitude to embrace boardroom opportunities, develop strategies and expertise for driving organisational change, increase your knowledge of innovative corporate governance practices, expand your capacity to understand, support and collaborate with your staff and senior executive, and access a global network of board leaders and a library of support and resources. That's how you make impact. And let's be honest, who doesn't want that? Visit us today at associationtransformation.org for more details and to sign up for our next 12-week modular learning programme. Because if you don't make impact, someone else will.
Hello and welcome to Association Transformation, the transatlantic conversation that seeks to advance the impact and evolution of non-profit organizations across the world. I'm Andrew Chamberlain, the Managing Director of Consort Strategy.
And I'm Elisa Pratt, Chief Strategist of Brewer Pratt Solutions.
And together with our special guests, each week we seek to take a deep dive into the issues, the topics, the challenges and the opportunities facing our association community. Between us, we've seen an awful lot: membership, mergers, boards, leadership, advocacy, education. Nothing is off limits. Any subject that affects not-for-profits, their survival or their success is always up for discussion. Interestingly, sorry, are you coughing because is all that fresh air from your luxury balcony over the lake disrupting you there, Lisa?
I am quarantined in a cabin, thank you very much, avoiding all human beings.
Okay, for the listeners' benefit, she's not quarantined in a cabin. She's in a cabin overlooking some fabulous lake in, where are you? Somewhere in Virginia, somewhere are you?
We're in North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina, right. Okay, it's beautiful weather, beautiful sunshine. So my heart does not bleed for you at all. So as we say, we've seen it all, been there, done that. Well, I think that was probably true until the start of 2020. I don't think anyone has been there and done the last 9 to 12 months. And this week we want to talk about the intrinsic relationship between the association sector and the events industry. You know, COVID and the subsequent public health and safety measures, as we all know, have prohibited in-person gatherings for most of 2020, and sadly will continue to do so for the near future. And one of the worst hit sectors globally is the events industry. The ban on mass face-to-face gatherings has meant no concerts, sporting events, festivals, and specifically for associations, no conferences, exhibitions, dinners, award schemes, etc., etc. Now, for the vast majority of membership organizations, events are integral to the value proposition and are a significant income generator. So, as I say, the relationship between our two industries is intrinsic. Or is it? We've invited this week 3 special guests from the event industry, but who have very, very close ties to the association world. We have Jennifer Young, who is president of Evoke Event Management Group Limited, joining us from, well, a rainy Vancouver, I understand. Jennifer, hello.
Yeah. Good morning. Yes,
How
it
are
is
you?
rainy today. I'm well, thank you. How are you, Andrew?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Very good. I'm kind of, I'm not jealous of the rain. I'm jealous of the beautiful lakeside views that you also, I think, have, but I'm not jealous of the rain. Also joined by Rob Evely, Managing Director at Brightham. Hi, Rob.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. It's dark and dingy here in Bristol. Absolutely grim. We've just we'd just come out of a huge busy November in events, so it's my first recovery day, so it's a really nice, this is a lovely thing to do on a recovery day. Thank you for having me on.
Good. We're so British, we're immediately just talking about the weather. It's fantastic. Our transatlantic friends are thinking, why are they so obsessed with the fact that it's raining or not? My God, what's wrong with them? But I'm delighted to hear you've had a busy November, so I'm looking forward to discussing that further. And finally, we have Ed Tranter, Managing Director at 73 Media, and is also a member, am I right in saying this, Ed, you're a member of the board at the Association of Event Organisers, is that correct?
Yeah, afternoon, evening, whatever you want to choose. Yeah,
Indeed.
good to be on. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, so I am on the board of the Association of Event Organisers. So I guess, two hats in this one. In that I'm involved in an association, and as an events company, we also work with associations. So
Yeah.
for both camps for this one.
So that is, and obviously that's true of all three of your organisations. You've all got extensive experience of working in the association sector. Now, I've started, we've started from I've introduced this in a pretty poor place, to be honest. Is it true? Is it true, Jennifer? The last 9 months for you. Let's just kick it off with the conversation about: is it as bad as I've just painted it, or is it worse?
Well, I think from the association point of view, it's just been devastating. There has been an ability to pivot into the virtual world, but it's a real shakeup for the association industry. It's a real shakeup from, their tried and true practices and their reach out to their members, and their ability to deliver meaningful return for those memberships. It's just been horrific.
But what about? If I may, just I think before we started recording, you mentioned that 60% of your business comes from the association world. So from your business perspective, in the event industry, I'm presuming you have also had a horrific year as well.
Tough times, absolutely. Again, we've been fortunate enough to be able to start moving events over as early as May of this year. But in Canada, it's it's as well as with the rest of the world. It's been a total flip. Our business obviously has had an increased fatality from it, but again, it's the ability to try and morph and change and dance the new song, and that's the virtual world. Also, trying to take a look at some other areas that associations and trying to provide new services to them from our perspective to the association world, including new marketing ideas and certainly new ways of looking at their business.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with that, and I've been trying to motivate clients to move to embrace online mediums for years, but with great reticence from mostly boards, I have to say, about the dangers of going on, the perceived dangers of going online, and the detriment of the live events. But what we've discovered this year with our clients is that their members love online formats. They're suddenly becoming so much more accessible to their membership because they can deliver online. They can still have a relevance. And I have to say, I think we need to stop talking about the word pivoting. We need to talk about, because the word, apologies, Jennifer, we've only just met today. The word pivot drives me nuts, because we're not turning around. We're not waiting to go back. There will never be a new normal. We need to move forward and adapt. And this is evolution. This isn't pivoting, and this isn't coping. And certainly my clients are suddenly discovering that there's a whole new world open to them, where at least you made the point very clearly, which they've been unwilling to embrace before.
Ed, are you seeing that? Obviously, both in the context of your business, but also within the context of the Association of Event Organisers. Can you echo what they in there?
I think, like every good discussion, yes and no. I think I totally agree with Elise that necessity is the mother of invention, and I absolutely believe that. But I think as is ever the case, everybody is right to a certain degree. The industry across the board in events has been absolutely savaged, and there is no amount of positives from anyone can possibly stop that from being true, because it is. And there are the biggest event organizer in the world, Informa, posted a first 6 months loss of this year of nearly £750 million. So This isn't, yes, we need to seize every opportunity and we have to look for the positives, but this isn't we've just been buried under 18 tons of coal, but look, we found a diamond. It's a bit savage than that. And also, I think small associations, you can pivot, change, adapt, embrace a new platform fairly easily, because the amount of money that you have in your physical event and the amount of money you're asking for in your virtual event aren't too dissimilar, and it's manageable. You take large scale virtual physical events, 50,000 attendees, 30,000 attendees. The revenue that comes from those events cannot possibly and won't be replaced by doing them. It just won't. People will attend things at them. Some will pay, most won't. The model is still not there yet in terms of delivering for the exhibitors and sponsors in terms of the same value. So associations, particularly large associations, are entirely dependent on the revenue that comes from a single year or biannual show that banks them. You cannot change that by doing a series of a beautiful the platform virtual event. It's not there yet. However, I do believe that the opportunity going forward is that we truly will have a degree of symbiosis between the two. But we don't, the model isn't broken for physical events. It's not broken. It's had a global pandemic. There was nothing wrong with it. We're not, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think I used the analogy before, which is it's like standing, I'll say sidewalk, so that we've covered the entire globe on the panel. But it's like standing on the sidewalk and complaining about your ability to cross a road when a taxi mounts the curb and runs you over. It's got nothing to do with that. You just got hit by a car. You can't control that. And that's what's happened to the industry. It will return. You've only got to look at the ways that everybody is desperate to get back to doing physical, wanting to get out and have that impact. And nothing will replace that face-to-face interaction. The ways do difference, but it won't sit. It will be an additional thing to it. And there you go. That's my rant over.
Lisa, you want to say something there?
He mentioned the symbiosis, and it's my fear that while we've gained progress through the necessity of survival and finding virtual events, my fear is that the symbiosis and what people are looking to as hybrid events are actually going to make things worse. I see so many small organizations who feel like they're soon next year going to have to offer both an in-person and a virtual, that it's putting on both of those and the costs of both of those that are going to ultimately be the final straw. I don't know what hybrid events really mean and who's going to make them successful.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Well, and I have to be the pessimist in the group. I'm not thinking we're going to be back in person in 2021. I just don't see it happening. And I think that when you talk about hybrid, this is lifelines that we're throwing out to these associations to say, hey, you're not going to sink. We're going to try and move you through this. And it's this layering that has to happen. But, I have seen very successful virtual conferences, but as Ed mentioned, they're not a replacement. They're not the way of the future. I don't agree with that. With all due respect, Rob, I think that we are going to see a lot of associations have some serious financial troubles in the next months.
It's okay. You can say it. We're going to see a lot of associations who are going to go bankrupt because their business models are flawed. And it's not that their focus on physical events or virtual events is wrong. It's just their business models are wholly reliant on one chief piece of income rather than diversifying income streams, innovation through membership activity broader than events. They have just put all their eggs in the one basket. And I totally agree with what Ed said there. It's not dead. Of course it's not. Absolutely. People are always going to want to convene and come together and have a beer or a cup of tea and physically engage. Of course they are. But I think, Mike, I think what 2020 has demonstrated is some of the fundamental flaws in associations' business planning and the ability to, forget the word pivot, their ability just to survive because at board level, they are not adequately skilled, trained, and to be running businesses, because they're not for profit, they're still not for loss, they're still businesses. I just don't think, I think it's exposed some real fault lines that are much, much broader than just, should we have an online event or a physical event, etc. Well, Rob, you were going to say something there before I started getting on my hobby horse almost.
I know. Let Rob defend himself. Gosh.
I don't think he has to defend himself, does he? I don't think he's.
Well, actually, it was just something I think I had misrepresented myself. I'm not a. I'm not particularly pro online, not particularly pro live. I sit across both mediums. I'm a live events person, but by heart, that's what I've been doing for the past so many years that I no longer count, because it shows how really old I am. But the point I was trying to make was that by going online, associations are making themselves more accessible and thereby improving their business model. There are, in the PCO world, professional organizer world, in which there are associations who run events, who are their PCO to underwrite the financial risk of that event. More often than not, without an appropriate risk or an acceptable risk reward strategy for the PCO. And those events are in real data, but in my mind, those events shouldn't be even running anyway. If you have an organization which can't bankroll its event, then they're too high. But the accessibility that on having an online version of an event suddenly gives members is absolutely fantastic. And I can give you an example of that. A client I worked with last year for the first time, they're a global association with 10,000 members. Their annual conference is one day in London and attracts 150 people. It's a small minutiae of their total membership. And they wanted to go online, and their board stopped it, sadly, because if they had gone online, their events program would have absolutely exploded. But I think Ed made a really good point as well about the commercial sides of this, because there's two sides to the financial success of an association, conference, or congress. You've got fees paid by the attendees, but those fees are offset substantially by commercial revenue. And if you can't deliver return on investment to your commercial partners or exhibitors, it makes it even more difficult to deliver online. And I'm struggling to see really good ROI for sponsors and exhibitors at the moment from the technology that I've seen and experienced.
Yeah, it's funny. Andrew, I don't know if you remember, but that's the very first podcast we did back in May or June. We had vendors on, and we said, no one's thinking about the vendors. No one's thinking about the sponsors and the advertisers and what they want out of these virtual experiences or these virtual platforms. And I think it still has yet to be given attention, and their dollars were maybe even more taken for granted than the registrants' dollars in terms of this transition. But Rob mentioned the dollars, and Andrew brought it up as well. And I have several clients who their budgets are not looking as horrific as they might have imagined at the end of this year, because they didn't host these in-person events. And it's not that they didn't bring in the revenue, it's that the expenses weren't there. They were running these events at a loss. And so the lack of these events has actually been the buoy to help them survive this year. The virtual event experience, they may not be putting on a full production, they may be Zooming through it, which we all know is not an ideal online experience, but they're not putting out the same type of dollars they used to for in-person, and they're saving money in the end by not having to put on these loss-leading events.
Yeah, okay, but surely, this is where I'm like, because the value.
Well, you think about what you're going to say. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I'll take 20 minutes to have a think about this, right? I was just going to say, but I hear what you're saying about, well, it's great that they've not made a loss. That's fantastic that actually, that they're in a better position than they thought they were going to be. But surely their value proposition is significantly diminished.
Oh yes,
because
I mean
they're
shaking in their boots for other reasons. It's someone referred to it as deodorant, and with that deodorant gone of a meeting that makes the members happy, there are other things are starting to smell real bad.
Oh, and that's a lovely metaphor. Yeah, go on, Ed. Yeah, speaking of that, yeah.
Well, thanks. Nicely teed up for me then. I take your point there in terms of there are some events where they have to put them on. They've always put them on. The expenditure behind them. I used to work with associations. The single biggest thing they did was incredibly grand. They were Dorchester and spent huge amounts of sponsorship, loads of people, and they spent about 20 grand more than they got. But it was a great evening, and all the members loved it. But they spent more than they got. I think the reality is that for the most part, the ones I'm talking about, for the most part, it's the thing that bankrolls them. There are associations in the UK that I know that run exhibitions where they're generating £6 million every time they run it. So that is a significant amount of money, and they certainly aren't spending £6 million putting it on. So, but they haven't been able to run it. They can't run it. Those different things have an impact. And I think that virtual has its place and is an opportunity. And I think we all need that something engaging with your audience is far than just sitting and hiding in the fetal position under your desk and hoping it all goes away. So without question, that needs to happen. I think for me, though, the engagement element of an audience, the engagement of an association, in some of these cases, I don't know what this model is that they should have approached or should in place that would have been different. Because if you're in their experience, in their circumstance, where something is generating millions, there are many things that you can do as an association that generates sums of money. You're not going to get people, unless you are providing industry standards that are compulsory to the sector and everybody has to have them, which few of them do. I think it becomes challenging to have that kind of breadth of different things. But I think the thing with virtual and the issue that a lot of these things have had that I've seen since we all moved into it back in March is people still trying to say, right, this was our physical event. We are now just going to do it online. And you're just going, well, that's not how it works. That is just isn't how it works. Look at the medium, look at the platform, make it fit for purpose. In the same way that a page-turning magazine that they designed for online, which made the sound of crumpling paper when you click the button to turn it, was a rubbish idea. So it's trying to lift and drop. Use it properly. And I think the opportunity actually, and the opportunity for exhibitors and sponsors is not about the interaction you get networking for 2 days in a room that's been created as part of the software that no one ever goes to, but actually it's about being engaged in the content, and associations and organizers are now becoming content producers. We are creating content in a way that you can't. If you've got a conference running in a hotel, we might film it, we might record the audio. Usually the only filming that happens at these events, exhibitions, large-scale conferences, summits, is enough video for you to put together your 3-minute thing that goes out afterwards to say, wasn't this brilliant? See you next year. Whereas when you're doing stuff into an electronic platform, and with all of the opportunity for mixing and editing that you can do live, you've tested their cameras, you've done everything like that, you're actually producing programming, which you can utilize, and you can tag on a sponsor's message around a piece of content. So they sponsor it, it gets used over a period of months, and that's how they get their value and their interaction, their engagement. And I think that is a big opportunity that associations can really take advantage of to add value and still keep revenue coming in.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways, if we're talking lessons learned from 2020, that your organization is a content creator, a content provider, is potentially one of the biggest lessons learned. But my question is, where does engagement fit in? I work with many organizations who don't have that standardized license or credential aspect, and bringing their members together to interact with each other through best practicing, through network, through community development. How do we, I guess I argue that it's not just about the delivery of content. How do we figure out the way through these platforms to create the human interaction that, maybe online can never have. But what about the networking people piece of this?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Well, just to go back a little bit, what Ed said, I think that in some situations, it's almost like what came first, the event or the association. And I think each association is so different in its business model that I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think that you're taking a look at some associations that I deal with, that they go in knowingly that their events are lost leaders, but it fills a need, it fills a goal. And I think that you can't just say, all events have to be profitable, because in some cases, some associations don't need it to be profitable. There's something else they're getting out of that. Whereas you have other associations where, yes, their business model might be a little bit flawed. This is the revenue generation. And what you have to do is you have to start taking a look at, okay, I don't think virtual events per se are going to be the solution. In that, I think it goes back to this layering of new ideas and marketing initiatives, and whether it's membership reach out, or whether it's looking to head to, as opposed to the massive conference, maybe it goes back to the town hall component, combined with the educational that might be part of the online. And it's rebuilding, not pivoting maybe, but rebuilding how some of these associations, sorry, I had to get my dig in, how these associations are going to be able to go to market. But I think it's very, very individual. If you've got an association where everyone's out on the field in a construction site, you know what? Transferring those guys to a virtual conference is just not feasible. So I think that you have to take a look at it. It's not a one size fit all. I think the virtual component is not part of the end solution of the viability of an association.
I don't think anyone thinks that it is, though. I don't think any of us feel that we're suggesting that that you should move to virtual events and this is the future, or this is your way out of everything, or indeed that everyone should do it. I think it's more a case of we're saying it's something that you should look at in your own situation, decide whether it's right for you, think about how you're going to apply it. Don't do a easy fix, I'm just going to run what I've run before, but run it online. But really think about it in its entirety and see what opportunity there is to actually have something that you can build on. It might be something that is just for a season. You might just have it for now until you come back to where you were before. Or it might be that you build something that has its own value, its own life, and runs alongside what you had before. Or you might have some sort of mixture of the two. I agree also with what Elise was saying before about, I think the hybrid thing, everyone talks about hybrids. I've not actually seen one yet.
I don't know what it means.
I always thought it just meant you do some stuff online, you do other stuff physical. I didn't think it was you do both in different mediums.
So I think the Brits is a hybrid event. But then you're going to get a good engagement of people buying tickets and people turning up if you're going to have Jay-Z and Beyonce rocking up as part of it. It does, and most associations can't generate that kind of audience. It's
not yet.
He's worked in paving for 35 years and is a well-respected face in the industry. Is brilliant, but it doesn't quite have the same pull, does it?
But with this mentality that somehow online means free, and that people are no longer willing to pay equal value for the same content simply because it's delivered online, and health concerns, how can online ever stand up, or how can in-person ever stand up to online? I mean, I guess the draw is the only unique experience that people will come for.
Well, I think the online thing you can actually make money at, and people are from a conference perspective. Because once again, thinking back to the, I think Rob said it right at the start, one of the opportunities that you have in conferencing is that you can now access speakers from all over the world that you couldn't have physically got to turn up. They only have to give up an hour of their time. They've got to do a bit of, it's a bit like this. If we were doing a physical event and you said, well, we're in Berlin, we'd love you to come and do a panel, and spoke to the four of us, and we've got to come from the US, Bristol, Tunbridge Wells, and Vancouver, we'd all be like, not unless you're paying. Yeah. And even then, we're too busy to jog on. So whereas now it's like you can send us an email, do a test, set up a clean feed, and we're all here within 30 minutes. And you can really broaden out the breadth of it. Also, the ability to deliver content now has become much, much stronger online than it was before. And the accessibility in terms of asking questions directly. But for those people that are really, really busy, yes, you're losing out the networking aspect, which is a really important thing. But for some people, particularly in out and out conferences, where you were planning on sitting in a room for 7 hours a day listening to people speak at you anyway, actually losing the travel time, being able to do it piecemeal. I've seen some people do the model where they do a full conference and actually it's only an hour's session a day and they run it for 3 weeks. So that way you don't even have to leave work. You can take an hour out of your working day and watch it then and there. There are different models now, and people are paying the same or in some cases a higher price because they've got a better speaker program. So people are paying for it in those things, but I don't think that's going to work with exhibitions. But certainly in some conferences and summits, I think that will be an opportunity.
Rob, what were you thinking?
I think that Elisa, you alluded to it, and Ed, you did too then, about content and structure is really important. And there's lots of there are positives and negatives to both. But I think at the moment, if associations are looking to go online, they really need to be thinking what action methodologies can they use to get content over and also to replace networking. There's two examples I have. The idea of networking is really interesting. At a conference, a networking session is generally, it's not really networking. You go and see your mates and have a drink, and you may get introduced to somebody else, and they may introduce someone else. But it's not. It's good networking. If you do an online speed networking event, 5 minutes per person. Wow! The first time I was amazed. I met, was it 10? No, 10 people in an hour, and I had 5-minute conversations with each of them, and it was so valuable. I'd never experienced anything like that before. It was smooth, it was slick, and I got so much out of it in terms of new contacts that I made that it would take me a day to make that much networking, simply because actually, well, this may be a peculiarly British issue, but us Brits really struggle to withdraw from networking conversations when the conversations run out. We really struggle with the, yes, is that the time? Not, okay.
You don't fake a phone call? You just fake a phone call or fake a text?
Rob, I am still basically recording the same podcast I started with Elisa about 3 months ago. Honestly, I can't. It's too rude to say I've had enough.
But the other thing we discovered last week, and actually it's the last two conferences we've done have both been medical conferences where doctors and scientists have been sharing their work, and we put in meet the speaker sessions after the symposia, and they were group discussions. And my word, the amount of collaboration and content that comes out of those from 20 people in a room. And I've been doing medical conferences now for maybe 10 years or so. I've never seen that amount of collaboration come out of a face-to-face conference. And it was because there are no distractions, but there are controls over who can speak. It's easier to facilitate, and a good chair in a session like that will allow the conversation to flow much better. I think that there are some key advantages to online that can be really exploited, but there are key disadvantages. There are massive disadvantages which online can't replace, and that's that feeling of shaking someone else's hand when you meet them, and the bond the chemical bond, literally, that is created and in our minds with that individual.
Yes, we learned the power of the mute button during the presidential debates. So yes, the power of the facilitator during a virtual experience can be a much better one for the audience. But Rob, Ed, and Jennifer, thank you all so much for joining us today. This discussion does not come to an end here. I don't think it'll end for quite a while. And the hope is that we learn from the virtual events that these organizations are able to diversify and to maximize their impact as content producers. So thank you so much for your time. This conversation will evolve and go on. Who knows for how long? Actually, I think I've read things that the meeting and travel industries won't return to their previous revenue marks until 2024. So maybe we should schedule something again here in a few months to see what you're all experiencing with your clients after another 6 months of all this. But in the meantime, for Andrew and myself, we want to thank you for joining us and thank our audience. We hope you'll join us next time and every time as this transatlantic conversation expands into more international and nations conversations. We hope you've enjoyed today's conversation. And if there's a subject you'd like us to explore, or if you'd like to join us on the Association Transformation podcast, visit us at associationtransformation.org and you can send us your ideas. Until then, you can find Association Transformation wherever you get your podcasts, and we hope you'll add us to your favorites list. Until next time, stay well and put your members and your mission first.
Association Transformation is brought to you in partnership between Console Strategy and Brewer Pratt Solutions in support of the Institute of Association Leadership.
What sort of leader do you want to be? Why should others follow you? What does your association need and expect? One thing is for sure, we all need impact. Impact is a 12-week modular-based learning program representing the knowledge and competencies that experienced and high-performing directors are expected to possess, forming the basis of impactful board leadership. To find out more and to register now for the next available course, visit us at associationtransformation.org and ensure you have impact.